So today we're going to learn how to use the brush in a slightly different way and to do some painting that is more natural looking and blended. The first trick is to go down below the rainbow. After you've selected your paintbrush, there's an S, looks like the letter S, and then there's what looks like the letter V. And the V is the one you want to choose. And you're going to adjust your color and then start painting with it. You can see from what I just did with the red that I was able to kind of paint in a blended way over what I had there. So that's the idea that I want to encourage here, is that you paint over everything using a more blended brush. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start on the ceiling. I guess I'll make it red. And I'm going to start at the top there. And I'm going to make that top part fairly bright red because that's the part that's closest to me. But as I go down, I'm going to try and lighten up the color. And sometimes I might have to change the color by taking it away from the dark red and bringing it over to the pink. And that way I can go back over some of those spots and create that real gentle sense of blended color, that the color is changing from one thing into another in a very slow way and a blended way as you go closer to the dark red. And you can even, start putting in more darkness in there as well. One of the things you can also do with the blending is to change how fast it blends, and you can do changes to the numbers. If you look down below on the right hand side, there's 4 words there, and there's little toggle switches that you can move around. You can use the blending, which is the bottom one, opacity, that's how dark it is, or how full it is, how non-transparent it is, and then of course the size of your brush, and you can see the size changes dramatically depending on what you do. So if you're using something that's really got a thick opacity, then it's going to look darker. Whereas if you change it, it should lighten up a little bit. But try each one of these as you go along. So I just did the blending and brought it way down, and so that made it much darker. And then I can bring the opacity down. Let's see what happens when I go almost to the bottom there. Yeah, so the opacity, I have to get a really small number on that opacity in order to kind of use that where it's not taking over all the color that I've already put on there. So that opacity is really seeming to help with that. So some of these areas I want to bring back to being kind of reddish. I'm just going over and over some of the areas just to see what happens and to get kind of that feel for the color and how it's slowly changing on this ceiling. And then of course I would go to the next area, a wall, and on the wall you have to remember that you're kind of doing a square, a large square on the outside of your paper or your image area on your screen, and it's that area closest to you on the very sides that is going to be the darkest. And then as you go toward the back of the wall, that's where your color is going to be lighter, because it's slightly further away from what you're seeing. And this is how we create pictures that look like they are fading out and getting further away from us. They look like they're changing. They're changing how close something is. And if you just did it with flat color, like the color's the same in the back as it is in the front, then it's going to look like, even though you have the diagonals, it's going to make it look more flat. So play around with that and try out different colors in different areas. You don't always have to have the same exact color in your picture. You want to experiment with each of the walls, do the ceiling, the walls, and then of course the floor. And you'll almost be replacing some of the harsh black diagonal lines that we started with, and you might start seeing how those lines are almost not necessary once you've started doing all of the painting. That depending on the size of your brush, you can start almost erasing those lines because they're being replaced with the color, which is, the color is becoming the line between the different parts of your picture rather than that black line. You don't have to erase it, but it's just something to notice about coloring, that the color itself starts to become a factor in the painting rather than the dark black lines that you may have put in there. All right, keep going and have a good time with